BYJU'S 6th, 7th and 8th grade channel. I'm your teacher Aishwarya, and in this video we are going to be exploring the topic soil as a resource. Now this right here is a very simple topic, but it is also very important on an examination point of view. So I hope all of you are excited for this video. If you are somebody who stumbled upon our channel for the first time, I welcome you to our beautiful family here at BYJU'S. I hope you enjoy this video, and towards the end, if you do like the way we teach, do not forget to hit the like button on this video, and of course do not forget to stay subscribed to our channel for more such interesting content. So without wasting any more time, students, we'll get started. Now, this particular topic comes under the chapter Land, Soil, Water, Natural Vegetation and Wildlife Resources. So here we talk about these four very important resources which we will learn about in great detail in this chapter. Now, in the channel, of course, we have spoken about land as a resource and its importance. Today, we are going to be focusing on soil. Right? So in this video, what we are going to be learning about is what is soil, how is soil formed, what is the importance of soil, and how over a period of time there has been degradation of soil, and what are the factors that contribute towards the same. And towards the end, we will understand how we can protect and conserve our soil. So this is the broad four topics that we are going to be covering in this particular video. So now, of course, when I say the word soil, right? From our lower grades, whenever we think about soil, we also think about plants, right? Because we know that in order for plants to grow and survive, they require soil. Yes, and we know that soil consists of various nutrients inside them that allows these plants to grow. Today we're going to have a detailed understanding about how soil exactly looks like and how it is formed. So if I were to ask you very simply, what is soil? What would you say? You'd take a minute and you would say, ma'am, probably soil is what I would find on land, right? So we could simply say that soil is a thin layer of grainy substance that we find covering the surface of the earth. And we see that it is closely linked to land, right? And the kind of landforms that we observe are playing a very important role in terms of what type of soil is going to be formed. So understand that soil is not the same all across the world. We see that within India itself, different parts of our country have different types of soil. Their characteristics are also different. We will learn more about types of soil later on, but for now, what I need you to have a basic understanding is that it is a thin layer of grainy substance. Yes? Now, if I ask you, what is soil made of? So first and foremost, we see that soil is a mixture of different substances. So we see that it includes organic matter, it includes certain minerals, and it includes weathered rocks found on earth. Now understand, we are using the term weathered rocks and not just small tiny rocks, right? Why are we using the term weathered? That is because soil is formed by the process of weathering. So now it is important to understand what is weathering, right? So weathering can be simply defined as the breaking up and the decay, right? So we see that it is the breaking up and the decay of exposed rocks by various factors. So I would simply say breaking up of rocks due to various factors that are there, which we will learn in just a bit, right? So we see that technically, the right mix of your organic matter and the mix of minerals is what makes soil fertile. So if I were to go back, our plants are able to grow, right? Because they require nutrients. But they should have the right mix of nutrients such that it can support life. Which is why presence of organic matter in soil is very important here. Now here are some fun facts for all of you. Did you know that just for 1 centimeter of soil to be formed, it takes hundreds of years? So just now we discussed that weathering is the process by which your soil is formed. Now we must just think, but breaking of rocks is so easy. How long could it take? As a matter of fact, for just 1 centimeter of soil, it takes hundreds of years. And this time is a very important factor. So please keep this in mind. And along with that, if you just take 1 teaspoon of soil, right, healthy soil which has a lot of organic matter, we see that it has so many microorganisms in it that there are almost more number of microorganisms than there are people. So which is why we see that this is also very important. Now we understand that soil that is there, of course, supports life, right? And I mean, supports life in the sense we could say that it, of course, has microorganisms in it, and along with that, it allows plants to grow as well. But if you were to take a look at soil, is soil just one thin layer that exists? Or what exactly, how is the soil structured, right? So now if I were to take maybe a plot of land, right? So imagine I take this plot of land and I take the land and I cut it vertically. From top to bottom, if I cut it, you would see that there would be a vertical section that we would observe, right? Vertical means from top to bottom. And this right here would give us a view into the soil profile. Now, what is soil profile? It's nothing very fancy. It's very simple. We've learnt about it in our lower grades as well. So, soil profile that is there is simply a vertical cross section of the soil, which includes the various layers that run parallel to each other. So now you would also probably learn it as various horizons as well, but we won't go into the details of it. We will focus on the important layers that are there. So here we have the topsoil, we have subsoil, we have weathered rock material, and we have the parent rock. Now the topsoil that is there is obviously the topmost layer which is there, which includes humus, and it also includes vegetation as well. Now we see that this particular layer, this humus that is there is the organic rich layer. So we see that this right here is the organic rich layer. And we see that it is porous. That means that there are various pores or holes which are present, which allows for the movement of air and water. And of course, we see that this particular layer, right, the topsoil is the layer where your seed germination takes place. So this is what makes your soil, right, the amount of organic material that is there or how much nutrients are present. This is what determines whether the soil is fertile or no. Yes? So now, of course, we see that this particular layer also includes various microorganisms as well, right? And this right here is very important because presence of microbes will facilitate decomposition. If decomposition happens, then again, more amount of nutrients which are present in the soil. So your topsoil is very, very important. Now let's move on to the second type, which is your subsoil. Now your subsoil is a little more compact, right? We saw here that it was very porous. There were gaps which were present, a little loose. But your subsoil is a little more compact, which consists of sand, silt, as well as clay, right? And relatively, if you look at how much organic matter that is there, compared to your topsoil, this of course has relatively less amount of organic matter as well. And we see that this relatively has a lighter color when compared to your topsoil because of the lesser amount of organic matter. Then, of course, the third layer that you see is your weathered rock material. Now, weathered rock material suggests that these are the broad rocks that have been subjected to weathering, right? So, they are produced from your last layer that is there, or the deepest layer, which is your parent rock. So technically your parent rock that is there is the rock which starts to undergo the process of weathering and over a period of time results in the formation of your soil, right? Which is a mixture of organic particles, minerals and small rocky substances. So now with this we understand that weathering has a very important role to play in soil formation. Now what contributes? What are the factors that result in soil formation? Very important to understand. Now here you don't need to go in depth in understanding about it because on an examination point of view, you need to remember the terminologies, right? So when you talk about the factors that affect soil formation, you have parent rock, climate, relief, flora and fauna, and you have time, right? So let's get started with the first factor here, which is the parent rock. So from the name itself, right, parent rock, that means that this is the original rock from which your soil is formed, right? So you see that this is the original rock from which your soil is formed, or you can say the younger rocks come from your parent rocks. Now, why is your parent rock very important, or why is it a factor of soil formation? Shouldn't that be the basis? Why are we considering it as an important factor? Well, because if you see the kind of parent rock that undergoes weathering, right, that will also determine what kind of color the soil will have. It will determine what kind of texture it is going to have, what kind of chemical properties the soil will have, how porous the soil is going to be, all of that. So I'll write porosity or permeability. You can write any of the two. So you see that these are some things we will have to understand that this is determined by the parent rock. Right? Then we will move on to the second category, which is very simple and easy, that is climate, right? So when we talk about climate here, we know that temperature and rainfall play a very important factor in the terms of soil formation or in weathering, right? Because going back to definition of weathering, it is nothing but breaking up of the rocks, right? So temperature can play a factor, movement of water, rainfall can play a factor, which is why climate is also dependent, or it can influence soil formation. Next, you have relief. Now, relief is not the relief you get, the feeling of maybe feeling better. That is the relief that you know in English. Here, relief is very different in geography, right? So, here, relief is with respect to altitude, and it is with respect to slope, right? So this has to do a little bit more in terms of how the landform is. Now, altitude is basically the height that is there, right? So height from the ground is what we call as altitude. And slope we know, right? Slope basically is how steep it is, yes? So if it is steep, then we know that it would be something like this, no? We know that the slope is pretty steep. Now, why is slope a factor? So you understand that for soil formation, we see that there needs to be a space, right? Where there's a constant surface of materials. It should not be that if it is a plain ground, right? Soil formation happens better, or it happens a little, you could say that it supports or aids soil formation. But if it is a slopy region, right? There could be constant movement of water, rain, whatever climatic conditions could be there, which will result in surface runoff, right? So understand it this way. If I have a piece of soil like this, it will keep getting formed and it will happen normally. But if I have a piece of land which is like this, there could be constants, it could be subject to runoff, right? So here at this point, we see that the rate of removal in such slopes would be more than rate of formation of soil, right? Which is why we see that this contributes to becoming a factor. Now, this does not mean that it's a negative factor. We just see that the nature of soil that gets formed in such areas, right? We see that that's where differences in soil formation comes in from place to place. Then we have flora and fauna, which is again focusing on your microorganisms that are there, because we know that action of microorganisms also contribute to how much organic matter will be present in the soil. So that is also very important. Then time. Now we know from the beginning, right? I told you that for 1 centimeter of soil to be formed, it takes hundreds of years, right? So the amount of time that is taking place, or how much time gets contributed towards soil formation, results in the thickness of soil. More time means more soil. Less time, less soil. Easy peasy. I hope now factors that contribute towards soil formation is clear. So now why are we learning? Why are we going through this process of understanding soil as a resource, right? How is it a resource for you and me? What utility are you and I getting out of using soil? Yes? Now, first and foremost, understand that soil is extremely essential, right? Now, most often when compared to, say, water or maybe, let's say, land, we tend to neglect soil because we think that soil will be there. But understand that soil plays a very, very important role. It's so important that sometimes we don't pay attention to it. Now, you understand that soil, of course, has all the necessary nutrients for the plants to grow, right? And we know that soil that is there is also home to various microorganisms. There are so many microorganisms that are still not discovered as well, right? So, constantly there's a lot of research happening, and we never know, tomorrow we may encounter microorganisms that is super beneficial, right? So, it hosts a great deal of living organisms, and we know the importance of conserving biodiversity as well, right? Making sure all living organisms are conserved. Now, of course, we see that soil provides some people with some essential construction and manufacturing materials as well. So when you talk about clay, or when you talk about using all that, we know that certain construction requires soil, right? Whether it's in the form of sand or clay, we need it. Then, of course, we know soil filters out excess rainwater and regulates the discharge of rainwater. So, soil also keeps a control on flooding as well. Because we know that as a consequence, which we will learn, we see that if soil is not conserved properly, flooding could be a consequence. And of course, right, it buffers against the pollutants which come along with the rainwater, and thereby it improves groundwater quality. So when it rains, water seeps in through the soil through percolation, and as it goes through the soil, right, we see that the water actually gets purified. So the soil actually acts kind of like a water purifier for the groundwater quality. So you understand that in multiple ways, it could be very small, But in multiple ways, we see that soil is extremely important to all of us. Yes? Now, over a period of time, we see that we've not been taking care of the soil or not using it wisely, which has ultimately resulted in the degradation of soil. So how exactly has soil gotten degraded over a period of time, right? So now if I ask you, what could contribute towards soil degradation? The first thing you will tell me is, ma'am, I think it should be soil erosion, right? So we understand that soil erosion that is there is a major threat or is something that majorly contributes towards degradation of soil. Now there are two aspects to this, okay? Because soil degradation or let's say soil erosion can happen naturally as well to some extent. Then there are man-made causes. So if you see naturally, we see that at times there could be a landslide and sometimes there could be a flood, right? Or at times maybe there could be a drought due to lack of rainfall. Now when there is not enough water, right, or when there is a lack of rainfall, it results in drought. And if drought happens, then we know the soil becomes very dry, right? So at this point, we could say that the quality of soil gets affected. But let's say during a landslide or a flood, we see that the top layer of the soil is removed, right? So we see that the top layer of the soil is removed. And this removal of topsoil is what we call as soil erosion. Yes? So this is what we understand as soil erosion. Now normally it happens naturally through nature as well. But the rate at which it happens is very less, right? Because it's not like every day there's a flood happening or every day there's a landslide happening. The rate or the frequency at which this happens is probably little less. But when the human-made factors come into the picture, that is when rate of soil erosion increases, right? It's happening much faster, right? Resulting in degradation. So if you look at it, when we have deforestation, right? So we know that deforestation that is there, just give me one moment. So when we talk about deforestation, we know that it is the removal of forest cover, right? So we see that this right here is removal of forest cover. Now what happens is that when plants are there, right, their roots, yes, so let me just quickly draw this. Their roots actually hold the soil and bind it in place. But the minute you get rid of it, right, now the soil is exposed, which means that now your soil in this area where deforestation has taken place is subjected to soil erosion or can become, this place can be prone to soil erosion, I could say, right? Because now what has happened, the roots that were holding the soil in place is gone, right? So any other factor, whether it's rain or whatever it could be, removal of topsoil could take place, thereby degrading quality of soil. Similarly, overgrazing. Grazing is when you have a piece of land, right? So if you have a piece of land, you have your cattle, like your cows, your sheep, all of them coming and they'll be feeding on the grass, right? So if this is my piece of land, there will be again plants, right? So imagine these are all some grass that I'm drawing. Now the cow that is there would come and feed on it. Now there is one way of doing it where you limit the grazing that happens or you control the grazing. But when overgrazing takes place, right, when you keep going back or visiting the same piece of land and you're not giving it enough time to sort of recover, then what will happen? At one point, all these plants will be gone. Again, your land is prone to soil erosion, thereby we degrade it. And then, of course, usage of chemical fertilizers. Now, usage of chemical fertilizers does not really impact as soil erosion, but this right here affects the quality of soil, right? So, this affects quality. Now, we know that there are certain microorganisms, earthworms, so many living organisms which are there in the soil. Now, when you use something which is a chemical, right, that alters the chemical nature of the soil, which means those living organisms may or may not be able to survive if you put chemicals in it, right? So, it's kind of like if you have a living organism and you imagine if we have air around us and suddenly there are some, when if at all, when there is smoke, just giving you an example, right? So imagine if there was some smoke around us. We would be coughing and, we would not be able to breathe there for a long period of time because there has been some chemicals which are there in the atmosphere. There's been a change in the natural atmosphere. So similarly, adding chemical fertilizers into soil actually results in altering the chemical balance in the soil, which affects the microorganisms also. Which is why if you see, right, erosion, especially due to human activities, has accelerated degradation of soil. Now you'll tell me, ma'am, okay, we have done all this. But can we do anything? Is there anything that I can do, or is there any solutions to this? That is where soil conservation comes into the picture, right? So now soil conservation can happen differently in different parts, right? So here we see that now one main thing that we observe is, especially in mountain slopes, because it's a slopy region, movement of water can actually, those areas are more prone to soil erosion, right? And in plain area also we see that due to deforestation and overgrazing, there are issues of, maybe soil erosion, right? So what can we do in order to conserve our soil or prevent soil erosion from happening? Now you cannot apply the same technique everywhere, which is why we see that there would be a different technique we would apply in a mountain slope. There will be a different technique you will apply in a plain area. So let's see what we will do in a mountain slope, right? So in mountain slopes, we will build contour barriers, right? So what are contour barriers? Contour means to shape, right? So assume that contouring means to shape it, give it a proper structure that is there in simple lines. So in contour barriers, I'm just going to write it here. You will use stones, grass and soil, right? And we see that you will build a barrier out of all of this. Just give me a moment. You will build a barrier using all of these three. And you will build it along the contour. So if this is a mountain, right, or the slope, you will build a barrier around the contours or along the path that is there. Yes, and we see that there will be certain places wherever, so if there's water flow that is there, there will be certain trenches or certain parts where you can collect the water, right? So you will have trenches where you can collect water. So what are trenches? Basically, they are places, small dug holes, right? They are basically a dug, like there's a deepened dug hole wherein the water will come and it will settle there. It will basically cut the flow of water, right? That is the intent of it. Where the water, if it's moving and suddenly there's a place, it will start getting collected, right? So I hope we are clear. Now, once we build our contour barrier, what will we do? We will do contour plowing, right? So, plowing that is there, right? Or rather, plowing would go hand in hand. So, plowing we will plow parallel to the hill. Plow parallel to the contours of the hill, right? So that this again would break or it will act as a barrier to the flow, right? So, this is what we understand as contour barrier, right? Barrier is this. Contour plowing is to plow along the contours. It's as simple as that, right? And why do we do this? To break the flow of water. Now next, another step that we know about and we've been learning about is terrace farming, right? So we also call this as step farming also. It's another name for it. Now in terrace farming, what do we do? In the hill, especially in mountain slopes, we will break the flow, right? So if you have a steep mountain, you will start breaking it as steps. Yes, broad flat steps or terraces are made. So that again we see that this will break the flow of water and thereby we see that these flat surfaces are used to grow crops, right? So if crops are grown, we again know that means plants are there, soil is held tightly and bound by the plants. So that is what we understand as terrace farming or step farming. Now this is what I would do if I were in a mountain slope. But what if I'm on plain land? I'm not in the mountain, I'm in the plains. Now what am I going to do at this point? At this point I need to resort to some other steps. If I'm in a plain area, I will resort to mulching, intercropping or building rock dams. So what is this mulching? Now mulching is basically whatever bare surface, right? Whatever is exposed either to water or air, whatever surface is exposed, we will cover that exposed layer. Okay? So whatever exposed layer is there between plants, right? So I'm assuming you are doing agriculture. What you will do is you will cover it, okay? And how will you cover it? You will cover it maybe with straw, right? So maybe with straw especially, which is like an organic substance, you will cover it so that it will protect the soil moisture and again protect the top layer. Or what you can do is you can do intercropping, right? Intercropping is very simple. You see that different crops, right? They are grown in alternate rows. So here if I have one crop, here I will grow another crop. So thereby, right, how much ever soil gets exposed to rain and everything would be relatively less. So growing crops alternatively or growing two different crops alternatively is what we call as intercropping. Then you have rock dams, right? Now, rock dams are a way wherein you use rocks, sandbags or gravel. And again, you build dams so that the flow of river is again, right? It reduces the speed of flowing water. This again reduces the flow or removal of, like it reduces the rate of soil erosion, you could say. Then this is of course in plain areas. But of course in dry areas, right? Or I would say in coastal regions, so especially in coastal and dry regions, we see that shelter belts are, sort of built. Now, what are these shelter belts? Now, shelter belts are a long row of trees, right? So, it is a long row of trees that blocks the flow of air. So, you would have normally seen in coastal regions, right? You would see there will be one whole stretch where tall trees. Normally in Kerala, no, you would have seen there will be especially coconut trees, right? And you would have seen especially in regions where they are continuously there. Now, they act as shelter belts that block the flow of wind, right? Especially if agriculture is being practiced, thereby again making sure that soil erosion does not take place. So with this, if you see, right, there are various ways in which we can conserve our soil. Now, on an examination point of view, this right here is very, very important because they can ask you questions based on this. So quickly to recap, we started today's class with understanding what is soil, how soil is formed, what are the factors that contribute towards soil erosion. What are the factors that contribute towards soil formation. Then we learned about importance of soil, what are the factors that contribute towards degradation of soil, and how we can conserve soil. So I hope now the concepts for this particular topic is clear. If it is, here's a quick homework question for all of you where I need you to write down what are the two main climatic factors that are responsible for soil formation. Very, very important where I'm asking you what are the two main climatic factors. So with this, students, let me know in the comments of this video, and I hope that now this particular topic has become easy for all of you. If it did, then you know what you have to do. Because see, BYJU'S 6th, 7th, 8th grade channel has got you covered. And if you believe that the way we teach and the way we make sure that your academic content becomes easy, if you enjoy the way we do it, then I sincerely request all of you to hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, do not forget to show me your love by liking this video and sharing this video with all of your friends. Thank you so much for being a part of today's video till the very end. I will see you soon. But up until then, take care, lots of love, and bye-bye.